All right, before we start, I want you to imagine something that feels normal. Sunday night, October 8th, 1871. It's that kind of quiet evening where nothing bad feels possible. The air, it's warm, unsettling warm for Wisconsin in October, but not alarming. I mean, it's dry, yes, but it's not threatening. Oil lamps, they flicker as they always do in windows. Families, they settle in after church. Railroad workers, they finish their shifts, and kids are already asleep. And far away, miles off, there's a dull orange glow on the horizon. There's no smoke yet. There's no panic. It's just light. No one understands that this glow isn't coming from a fire. It is the fire. And before this night is over, fire will do things that fire is not supposed to be able to do. And by sunrise, entire towns will cease to exist. Rivers will be filled with bodies, and survivors will describe a night so violent that even decades later, scientists would struggle to explain it. You're probably thinking, oh, it's the Great Chicago Fire. Nope. This is the story that history forgot. This is Peshtigo. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Interesting, right? So I was doing what I do, scrolling the internet in the 3 seconds of free time that I have in my life. And I stumbled upon some kind of reel, some kind of short form content, and was talking about a fire that happened in Wisconsin. I was like, I ain't never heard of this. And then as I dug deeper and deeper and deeper, I don't think a lot of people have heard about this. And I said, this is a Yore Town episode. The voice you're hearing, it's me, it's Matt, it's Beard Laws, and joining me as always is the beautiful, the amazing, the super busy road warrior, dun queen, Meg.
Hi.
It is windy out there. Good thing there's not a fire here.
Oh.
Crazy weather. One day it's icy. We went from ice storm to snowstorm to summer to
wind to rain, back to freezing rain, back to snow. Now we're wind again. Going back to snow.
These Wisconsians can relate to our weather. But we're on the go and we're here. We made it back another week, another episode. This one's wild. You want to jump right into it? Without further ado, let's talk about it. Want to travel back to 1871?
Yeah.
Do your 1871 time traveling sound effect, man. Now I know where Islet gets it from. Love it. By 1871, Northeastern Wisconsin was one of the most heavily logged regions in the United States. You'd think your hometown was logged that well. Ain't nothing like Wisconsin in 1871. Peshtigo sat along, well, guess what, Meg? The Peshtigo River. Creative with their names, right?
Sorry. As soon as I did it, I knew it sounded just like Isla.
Is that what you're still laughing? It's good.
Yeah.
Hey.
I couldn't stop it.
Plant corn, get corn. That apple didn't fall far from that banana tree. So Peshtigo, along the Peshtigo River, it was surrounded by thick pine forests that had been aggressively harvested for lumber. Sawmills, Meg, they're running constantly. Railroads, well, it expanded rapidly. Logging camps pushed deeper into the wilderness. And everywhere logging went, it left behind fuel. Kind of reminds you of Tupper Lake's Great Fire, huh? I don't know why I'm on a fire kick.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Remind me to move on from the fire kick. These stories are just so wild that I just feel like we have to talk about them. Maybe I'll space them out, right? Well, again, wood, fire. It's kind of how you start fires, right? I mean, but you have branches, you have bark, you have, not like from a dog, but sawdust, dry / piled feet high across the forest floor. Can you smell it? You can smell it. You spent some time at a sawmill. At the time, fire was considered, in the 1870s, not a threat, right? Farmers burned land to clear the fields. Railroad companies burned debris along the track. Small fires smoldered constantly through the countryside. This alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual, though? It's that weather, Meg. The summer and fall of 1871 was exceptionally dry. Historical weather records and newspaper reports confirmed that weeks without meaningful rainfall. The forest, they were actually described as powder dry. I'm really painting this picture, right? All it needed, though, was wind. We can relate. Now's not a good time to anybody listening to have fires. On October 8th, unfortunately, dry powder, it only needed one thing. Guess what came, Meg? That one thing. Wind. The first part of Wind, Earth, Fire. Isn't that a band? Or was it a song? The band I'm thinking of. Isn't it Wind, Earth?
Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Earth, Wind, Fire. Oh, yeah. Should have been wind, earth, fire, because the wind came first, not the band, the fire. Let's move on, because late in the afternoon, gusts began blowing out of the southwest. As night fell, the wind intensified dramatically. Fires that had been scattered across the region for days, unfortunately, Meg, they started to merge. Not just one fire, dozens, farmer dozens of fires just started to come together. Railroad workers reported sparks and embers being lifted into the air and carried miles ahead of the flames, which would then start new fires. And this was faster than anybody could react. By around 10 p.m., witnesses described hearing a low, continuous roar coming from the forest. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It almost felt as if something was alive. That has to be terrifying to hear that coming before and knowing there really isn't much you could do. What are you going to do? Just jump in your car and get out of town? They didn't have cars in 1871 like most people, I would imagine, right?
I don't know. I feel like we look this up every episode.
Well, at one point you would think. Let's head on over to our friend, my phone. In 1871 in Wisconsin, what was the primary, more popular choice of vehicle? In 1871, the most popular vehicle were still horse-drawn carriages and wagons, with the industry booming due to agricultural growth. So, yeah. Bicycles, though, were beginning to gain traction as a fast personal mode of transportation. Yeah, wagons and buggies still, and bicycles. I mean,
Okay.
how long do you think it would take in an emergency to get the horse attached to the buggy, get on the buggy, and get going? It's got to be minutes, right?
Yeah.
Because I would have to imagine you got to go and get the horse. And if a fire's coming, you want to get all the horses, at least. I mean,
But at that point, do you just each ride a horse? Leave the buggy?
what if you have 6, 7 people?
I mean,
Probably. But at least you got to get a buggy, get the fam, get the kids.
yeah.
So, I mean, you're talking 5-10 minutes at least, right? Maybe 15. I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure they're good at it, but you got to get the horse. You got to get them hooked. You got to get on. I'm sure if you really needed to get going, you could get going a couple minutes, but the fire's coming, right? Ugh. That, I don't want to think about that. I don't know how well I would have done in 1871. Think you could have been all right?
Probably not.
All right. Well, what happened next is not debated. The Peshtigo Fire became a firestorm, a phenomenon so intense that fire generates its own wind system. That is crazy. I don't know how that science is sciencing, but a fire so intense that it creates its own wind system is also terrifying. I think somebody needs to create a movie about that. Hell with the Sharknadoes. Let's bring back the fire of Peshtigo. And as flames consumed oxygen, fresh air was violently pulled inward. Winds accelerated to hurricane-like speeds. Imagine a hurricane fire coming at you.
Be terrifying.
There's, obviously old, reports and science and data and stuff, but they've taken some modern twists and been able to kind of, reenact, or what's the right word? Just kind of recreate, or just kind of come up with their own estimates. And they said that the speeds were over 90 miles an hour. They obviously can't confirm that, but based on their models and, nerdy, numbery stuff, I couldn't imagine a 90-mile-an-hour fire coming at you.
Yeah, that's scary.
Scary. That's nightmare fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not tell the kid, because we'll get a knock on the door about that terrifying nightmare too. But what is confirmed is behavior consistent with firestorms. Flames, jumping rivers and fire breaks, structures igniting without direct flame contact, just based on the heat, which is also terrifying. Extreme heat ahead of the visible fire front. So again, you might see that orange glow coming, but the heat from that fire is so hot that you don't have as much time as you really think. And it's not like they were posting on the Book of Faces and, the Twitter and being like, fire's coming, hurry up, or hit the fire alarm, we're evacuating. 1871 that were able to survive described being knocked down by sudden gusts and unable to breathe. Many victims were later found unburned that were actually, died from suffocation before the fire even reached him. This detail is recorded repeatedly in the 19th century coroner reports. That is unbelievable. And you have to almost think, too, if the fire is pulling all the oxygen to fuel itself, probably dying from like carbon monoxide and lack of oxygen on top of. But I guess, morbid as this probably sounds, you'd almost want to go from that rather than being burned. Man, when the fire hit Peshtigo itself, panic obviously spread pretty instantly. People, they went to the river. The most logical escape imaginable, right? There's no way a fire is going to get by the water, but the firestorm superheated the air so intensely that survivors reported steam rising from the water surface. Can you imagine that it was so hot that it boiled the river? Obviously, the actual river boiling is debated, but regardless, severe heat exposure and drowning are fully documented causes of death in some of these people. So people naturally were like, hey, this fire's coming. I don't know what to do. So they jumped in thinking, hey, I'm going to be safe in here. It's not going to go in there. It's going to keep me cool. They jumped in, and unfortunately, people never resurfaced. Others, they would, cling to logs only to be crushed by debris, burning structures, and then bodies, structures, everything just continually were swept downstream. Some residents, they would actually jump into their own wells and root cellars trying to avoid this fire. And many suffocated as oxygen was being consumed by the fire that was above them. Entire families were later found together underground. No burns, no injuries, just simply gone.
Sad.
So sad. Couldn't imagine being there with the fam, the kids, the terrifying, and just saying, we'll be all right. Never to be seen again. Multiple survivor accounts did describe what we now recognize as fire whirls, which appeared to be fire tornadoes, rotating columns of flame generated by intense heat and wind interaction. They would describe them as spinning walls of fire, balls of flame rolling around the ground, and animals running while fully engulfed. My God, that paints a terrifying picture. How has there not been a movie with stuff like this? Other than what's the flaming dude that rides a horse? Mythical. Like the Halloween guy with the flaming head on the horse.
Sleepy Hollow?
Yeah, right. Maybe that was based off Peshtigo. Maybe there was a guy that had his head on fire, the horse was on fire, and he was running out of there, and they were like, Sleepy Hollow.
I believe that's the Headless Horseman.
Yeah, but he wasn't on fire?
His pumpkin head was on fire.
Maybe it wasn't a pumpkin head, Maybe a guy threw a pumpkin on his head to protect him like a helmet. These descriptions were actually documented in firsthand testimonies that were collected by Wisconsin authorities, and they were on whatever newspapers were left in the area, And what's wild to think, too, obviously with technology and stuff there, people actually believed that the world was ending. I mean, there was a lot of references in the biblical world, I believe, where fire was raining and tornadoes. And let's be honest, a lot of people believed it. More importantly, a lot of people's world did end during this fire. What are you rapidly fact-checking over there?
I was trying to look up if there's a movie about it, but I don't know how to spell it.
Peshit. I think I added it. Peshtigo. Peshtigo. I know I Esh. Pesh. I'm sounding it out. Peshtigo.
There are documentaries and TV episodes.
But not an actual. Isn't it crazy, though, that of all the things in history that we were taught, we were learned, that this is just never... I wonder, too, if maybe in the Wisconsin history classes in school and stuff, this one was brought up, but just because we're in a different state, it wasn't. I mean, the Great Fire of Chicago got a lot of publicity and, history lessons. I'm just curious why this one didn't.
A 2023 episode from the Fascinating Horrors series.
It's available on this?
Available on YouTube.
Ooh. All right, well, if I remember to, I will try to find that and put it in the video right here that you can click. But I'll probably forget. So if not, you can take a screenshot of me looking like I'm saying number 1. All right. Well, when the fire finally burned itself out in the early hours of October 9th, northeastern Wisconsin, Meg, was unrecognizable. Roughly, how many acres do you think were burned, roughly, if you had to guess? Yeah, just thousands? 7,000? Pretty close. 1.2 million.
I was getting there.
1.2 million acres were burned. That's a lot. How many confirmed deaths do you think happened? Confirmed. Remember?
I don't know.
I mean, 1,500. It's tough to just randomly guess the population of a town that you've never heard of. I get it. 1,500 confirmed people passed away, but some estimates reach actually 2,500 based on missing person and destroyed settlements. Unfortunately, the exact number is never going to be known. And you're probably thinking, why? Because entire towns vanished. There was no records, no bodies, no names. Peshtigo alone lost over 2/3 of its population. And that's just this town. But imagine it'd be like, where we live, there's a city, there's all these other little towns.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to have any records of that. They probably don't have town halls and stuff, in this time. And unfortunately, too, that many casualties in this era, bodies were buried in mass graves, and some bodies, they were just never recovered at all. This became part of the land. But here's the cruelest truth of it all. The Peshtigo Fire occurred the same night as the Great Chicago Fire. So as Chicago burned brightly and loudly, Peshtigo burned quietly. Chicago had photographers, Peshtigo had ash. Chicago became legend, Peshtigo became forgotten. There's been a lot of theories, I think we even covered in the video we did, that the fires were set everywhere, intentionally. Can we prove it? It's wild because historically the Peshtigo Fire remains the deadliest wildfire and deadliest single disaster in American history.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Survival stories from Peshtigo defy instinct. One man survived by lying face down in a shallow stream, breathing through mud-soaked cloth as the fire burned over him. Another one, I don't think I could do this, but buried himself in wet soil. Buried himself alive in wet soil while flames roared above him like a train.
That's wild.
Unbelievable. And these accounts are actually recorded within weeks of the disaster. So, not decades later, these people told how they survived. And then it just was documented, and we were able to find some records of that. So it wasn't like it was decades later and they had time to embellish it. This was just right after it happened. Still in shock. That is. And again, the Great Chicago Fire got all the... Granted, did that cost America a lot more money? Yes, because of the population.
Right.
But there was more deaths in this little town in Wisconsin than there was in Chicago. Peshtigo, it wasn't just a tragedy, Meg. It was a warning. It was a warning about industry without restraint, about nature that was pushed too far, about how disaster doesn't always announce itself with sirens. Sometimes it just arrives as a quiet little glow on the horizon. And if history has taught us anything, Meg, it's that the deadliest stories are often the ones that nobody remembers. What do you got? You got anything on this?
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's sad. It's tragic. It's
scary.
And it makes you thankful, just not only to be here, but to live in a time. Yes, cell phones have really changed the way we live our lives, and so has technology. Positive is something like this probably isn't going to happen, because as wildfires grow throughout our nation, people are warned, and we have the science, the data, the technology to be like, this is going to hit around this time. Get out of there. Like just the tragedies that happened out in California within the last year. Yes, a lot of people lost a lot of houses, but they didn't lose their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But this was Peshtigo, and the fire probably still burns in that town, just in silence. That's all we got for this week's episode of the Yore Town Podcast. We'll be back next week, and hopefully with something a little cooler. No fire. I'll put that in my reminders. No fire next week.
No fire.
I'm getting burned out on the fire episodes. Sound effects queen is still going strong. All right, everybody, can't thank you enough. I'm Matt. That's Meg. This has been the Yore Town Podcast. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.